stigma, particularly in communities of color, through increasing education and awareness.
So we will now introduce our panelists. From the New York Association of Black Psychologists, we would like to welcome immediate past president Dr. Dana L. Collins.
Dana.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Dana L. Collins. And Dr. Denise Hines-Zami.
And she served as the board member and chair of the Legislative and Social Committee. She was also past president in 1999 and 2001. And just to begin this final session, Dr. Collins is going to lead us in a guided meditation.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So I'll first say thank you all for being here. I'm going to say that over and over, but I really do appreciate it. So we're here for and about peace, and a lot of what's been said over the course of the past couple days and what came up at our last presentation was really starting with ourselves and being in touch with ourselves, being sort of centered within ourselves. So I just want to lead a very brief meditation on connecting with our intention for being here. So if you would like to close your eyes just for a few minutes, I'll invite you to do that. If closing your eyes doesn't feel like something you want to do right now, that's fine. Just find sort of a focal point to rest your gaze on and sort of lower your gaze. And let's start by just taking 2 or 3 deep breaths in and out. Noticing how the body feels as the breath enters and exits. Maybe one more. And we're just going to take a moment to think about, for each of us, our reason for being here. So maybe that's to connect with others, maybe it's to just learn something that you didn't know before, maybe it's to get new ideas, maybe it's to see old friends. Whatever that is, just see what comes to you. See what seems to be the reason that's coming up, or any of the thoughts or the feelings or the emotions. As you're getting in touch with that, just see if you can pay attention to what's going on in your body, where you feel that in your body. Just continue to stay with that for a minute. If you've come up with an idea or a question or whatever it is, see if you can come up with just one word that sort of describes what your reason, your intention is. And just see how it feels to lean into that for the next couple of moments. If you get distracted, that's okay. The human mind gets distracted all the time. Just come back to what your intention is. Just resting here for another minute or so, moment or so. And in just a second or so, I'm going to ring my bell, just sort of bring us back together, but there's no rush. We'll take our time with this. Okay, so there is no meditation bell because of technical things, but I'll invite everyone to just bring their hands over their eyes, if that's comfortable. And rather than, just open your eyes and abruptly coming back, you can slowly move your hands away from your eyes so that the light is not as jarring. And then when you're ready, you can start to gently open your eyes. So I hope that folks were able to connect with something and that you continue to lean into that and nurture that.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel like that was beautiful, especially at the end of a long day. We've all been sitting. It's nice to recenter.
Exactly, yeah,
Exactly.
that's the other thing about mindfulness. Yeah, just
It's very much needed.
Yes. And so we're going to kick off our last panel. Our first question is going to be for Dr. Collins. So just giving our audience like a kind of overview, what is mental health stigma, would you say, and what are the contributing political, socioeconomic factors?
Yeah, that's a big question, and it's one that I've actually been asking. So I am a part of a project that's funded by the New York Office of Mental Health. Very fortunate to have that grant, where we are looking at mental health stigma, mental illness stigma, and BIPOC communities, and asking folks, what is mental health stigma, what is mental health, what are the barriers to receiving care, and what can we do to combat stigma, what can we do to eradicate it? And we're taking people's ideas and putting it into a toolkit and making a website to just raise awareness. So I'll just touch a little bit on some of what folks have shared there. So stigma is really, it's about people, it's about a social process, and it's a process where people who are perceived to have mental illness or mental health challenges are labeled and seen as differently. They're seen in a disparaging way. There's othering. That is, it's fueled by a lot of things. Two of the main things, though, are fear and misinformation. The fear and misinformation have a lot to do with some of the structural issues within the U.S. So we know that BIPOC communities have poor access to health care, and that can lead to poor health care, poor outcomes, and lack of trust of health care providers. And when there's that lack of trust, there is maybe a tendency to not want to receive care there, finding other ways to receive care. And because there's been this disparagement, there is people just want reasons or want ways to distance themselves from it. And of course, fear rises up. So those are two of the main things: the fear and the spreading of misinformation. What else can I say about this? So I am wondering if anyone wants to add on to that, because I think the audience is pretty friendly and has some good ideas. So is there anything I'm missing there? And if not, we can turn to you, Dr. Heinzami.
Well, I thank you so much, Dr. Collins. Dana. First, I'd like to say that I thank you so much for having me here. Everyone of the Group Coalition for Peace and Justice. I grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York, and graduated from New York City Community College and the City University of New York and Columbia. I feel I'm home, and I thank you. To add to what you said, Dana, mental health stigma has been defined as the disgrace, social disapproval, or social discrediting of individuals with a mental health problem. Mental health stigma and discrimination can make mental health problems worse, stopping a person, as you discussed, with mental illnesses from seeking and getting the help that they need. And too often, a delay in healing or in receiving a hand to help them cope at a difficult point in their lives will mean that the mentally ill will suffer even more or even perish. They're our brothers and our sisters, our mothers and our fathers, our aunts and our uncles, our relatives and our friends. Sometimes we don't know them, but we see them. Sometimes they are us. We need political momentum to motivate society to add money and substance to their talk about caring about the plight of the mentally ill. That's all I'd like to add.
Beautiful. And our next question kind of like goes along with that. Like how can such stigma hinder the ability of like low income and communities of color to access necessary mental health care? So I feel like you touched upon that pretty heavily in your response, but I'm not sure if you guys have anywhere else to add on that, or we.
Yeah, so one thing that happens in a lot of BIPOC communities is that there's this sense of communalism, you know, wanting to be together, wanting to be part of the group. And people who have mental illness or who are perceived to have mental illness can be seen as outside of that, seen as different. And if you're from a community that is, you know, about togetherness, you don't want that. And, you know, in order to avoid being cast out of your group, you might downplay what's happening for you and not get care. So that's one of the ways. Dr. Heinzami?
Yes, absolutely. Forgive me, I'm not hearing everyone there very well for some reason. So
Okay.
if I missed something, forgive me.
I'll try to speak up too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this question is for you, Dr. Collins. In your view, what work can be done on both an individual and collective level to collectively shift the current narrative surrounding mental health in these communities?
You know, I want to just come back to the last question, if that's okay, because there's a little bit more I wanted to say. So, a big part of the problem that leads to stigma and lack of care is that there's a real lack of racially similar and culturally appropriate, linguistically appropriate providers. And when that happens, people just aren't comfortable going to care. And when they do go to care, the quality of care can be less, or the provider might rely on harmful stereotypes. They might microaggress the person, and of course you don't want to be microaggressed when you're going for care. So that's another barrier for people. And of course a lot of things play into that, a lot of socio-political things. There are not very many BIPOC providers because fortunately a lot of education is required to provide services, and that's fortunate because we want to be prepared to provide good services. But a lot of marginalized communities just don't have access to that, and maybe they don't have role models for getting the education or experience. So a lot of, even though stigma is a social process and it has to do with people's ideas, it really does start at the top with the lack of access. And I'm sorry,
The other one, Aisha.
Yeah, so what work can we do either individually or collectively to shift this current narrative that we have surrounding mental health in these communities, and I guess to increase the use of care?
I've been talking a lot. Dr. Heinzami, do you want to answer that one?
I didn't hear it actually.
Do you
Was
mind?
it that question number 2?
Okay, I will ask more loudly. Or do you think we should hear?
Yeah.
Right, I'll go first. Okay. So, in your view, what work can be done on both an individual and collective level to collectively shift the current narrative surrounding mental health in these communities? So how can we as college students contribute to this movement?
Oh. Okay. Well, I'd say that college students can join mental health organizations like the Association of Black Psychologists. There is a chapter in most regions. The Association of Latinx Psychologists, the Association of Asian Psychologists, the Association of Indian or Society of Indian Psychologists, and any psychological association near you. Some organizations have college and university chapters. Students can become mental health professionals. We need many more. Or at the very least, be aware of and recognize hindrances to mental health services being provided and how to help.
Dr. Collins, anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the idea that Dr. Heinzami shared of joining an organization. And that's a nice thing because there are likely some people who have some experience, there are resources connected to those organizations. Those organizations aren't always perfect, and they might not always be easily accessible. And so sometimes, as you all know, it's necessary to start your own efforts. So that could start with just talking to friends. Talking to friends about what is important to you, why it's important to you, getting ideas from each other on different ways you can act. Maybe it is by going to a panel. Maybe you want to go to a demonstration together. Maybe you want to read a book together. I think the connecting with each other is really important. And then I think also educating ourselves, because even those of us who might experience mental illness or have folks who are close to us who experience mental illness or mental health challenges more generally might have some stigma. So self-stigma is a real thing and it's a real problem. And it happens because, you know, when you hear people being called crazy or people being ostracized or people being called out of your mind or whatever, you know, that takes a toll, and people are at risk of starting to internalize those ideas and feeling ashamed. So it's really important for us to think about what our views are on mental health and be honest with ourselves. You know, what is the first word that comes to mind when I think of schizophrenia, of depression, of whatever? So knowing where you are is really, really important.
I think also as college students, like creating a safe space for each other, like helping to like validate your friends and that what they're experiencing is like a real thing and that they're, again, like you use the word like crazy, like they're not like going through something that's not normal. Like obviously it's
Absolutely.
super normal and super, just as a human being, you're going through these things.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. Yes, normalization and validation. And you know, mental health challenges come from a lot of different things, but one of the big things is environment. And if someone is in a toxic or an oppressive environment, you know, this was mentioned earlier, there's a chance that mental health can and will be affected. So it's really helpful to validate that, well, of course you're experiencing depression or anxiety, you know, you are experiencing these racist microaggressions or, you know, whatever it is. The other thing I want to say is being gentle with each other. So it is natural to become angry. I become angry sometimes when people are, you know, saying, spreading misinformation about mental health. It's important to gently educate people. You have to talk with people in a way that they can hear and accept. If we come off as too shaming or too, I guess assertive for lack of a better word, people can feel defensive and shut down. We really want people to listen. So yeah, just being gentle with each other and communicating in a way that can be heard.
I think think also just like normalizing therapy.
Yes, yeah.
I think people oftentimes think that you need to be broken or you need to have like a very severe illness in order to go to therapy. And that's why I think there's also this idea, especially like in high school or college, where people don't want to mention that they're going to therapy. Like they feel the need to hide that information. Whereas I think it would be so much better if we would just be like, oh, like I have a therapy appointment today, like I'm going to see my therapist and I'm not crazy and I'm not broken and I just need to talk to someone, because I think everyone needs a therapist. Even therapists have their own therapist.
That's very true. I want to see, Dr. Heinzami, I don't know how well you're hearing, but if you have anything to add. So the last sort of point was normalizing therapy, normalizing getting help.
Normalizing therapy. I don't have anything to add right now to that. I know that communities, if they have someone who is in the profession and can lead a community session, this is what I've always dreamed about, actually. A community session of people getting together to just talk about their problems, to just, if they will. Some people won't, they're reluctant to in front of people who know them, their neighbors. But having something like that, a forum periodically, I think it's helpful. And I think it normalizes things. Sometimes you see it on social media, sometimes you see it, and that doesn't mean it's great. Sometimes you'll see it on television. I saw 2 teenagers talking about their mental health problems about a week ago. And it was really eye-opening. One was saying that he didn't really know that he had a problem until he started from homeschooling, going to a public school and meeting other people who pointed out to him some differences. And so he sought therapy, you know, and I'm glad that he did, and he's glad that he did. Some people will think it normalized, and some will be a little reticent.
Yeah, you know, I love the idea of community efforts at healing and raising awareness. That can make it feel a lot more comfortable, and maybe it is okay to talk about these things. As far as therapy, yeah, therapy can be great. It's important to find the right therapist. But I think, yeah, definitely it would be wonderful if people were able to just mention, yeah, I'm going to therapy. And I think it has become more normalized, especially since COVID-19 and, you know, the summer of 2020. And yeah, there are so many reasons to be in therapy. I'll share that, you know, I'm in therapy. I'm a therapist because I'm a psychologist, and so it's really important for me to be aware of what's happening for myself. But it's also just, it's a great way of engaging in self-discovery. You really can learn a lot about yourself, and that's really rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's
Since COVID-19, having a therapist has been more accessible to many people. I've become a telehealth professional in psychotherapy, so I see people online from different states from the one I'm in. And if you're able to have the equipment and to get on, then you're able to get therapy easily. You don't have to walk out your bedroom door, you know? So I think there are ways of trying to make it more accommodating, more visible to people who have access to computers. And not everyone does. So we need community in any way we can get it.
Yes, and I think like telehealth also makes people feel more comfortable in the way of where like you said, like they don't have to step out their door. So it's like they don't have to go into like an intimidating like doctor's office,
Right.
you know, like they can do it from the comfort of their home in their comfortable space, just like with working from home. Like people feel much more comfortable just expressing themselves when they're not have to like leave their closed environment. Like for better or for worse, but it provides an option for people who
Yes.
like are not comfortable going into those spaces.
Yeah, and there's research showing that it's just as effective as in-person services, and also no-show rates are lower. So people are less likely to miss their appointments, so there's more regular care. So it's really a great thing.
It's convenient.
Yeah.
Time, like instead of having to travel 2 hours.
That's a huge thing here in New York, yeah, having to get around.
Definitely. So, Dr. Heinzami, can you hear me in particular?
Somewhat.
Yes, this is Sierra. I'm like the furthest away from the computer, so I just want to like project if you can.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. So this question is for you in particular. So we want to just ask, how do you see like mental health advocacy intersecting with other movements for peace and justice? You know, this is the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice. So we're just thinking about how like mental health advocacy intersects with other movements.
Well, until the needs of all citizens are addressed and managed adequately and fairly, then none of us are truly healthy, free, or at peace, is what I have to say to that. How can I be truly mentally healthy if I feel impotent and do nothing about the injustices I see in the world? How could I possibly find peace? There are things that I, one person, can do. You too. Fannie Lou Hamer said, none of us are free until all of us are free. If other movements are advocating for peace and justice and for assist in improving the lives of people, then their fight is our fight and our fight is their fight. At that intersection, we can meet with them, we can march with them, we can learn lessons from what they do and how they are received by us. And we can pray and chant with them. We can share energy with them. I think we need more professionals in the field who are trained to recognize mental health services and what its hindrances are and its needs are. And I think we need more BIPOC individuals in the field. Then we advocate, and this is what we do with other organizations. There are many ways to advocate, something we can each do, fitting our own personalities, our strengths, and available resources. You can call or write letters to those in politics who can make changes in laws and in money distributions. You can march and protest in person. You can sign petitions. Using artistic ability, you can create songs, poems, sculptures, and paintings depicting the problem and what you think is needed to solve it. You can send articles to newspapers and journals so that your voice about this mental health need and movement and the needed changes can be heard by many. You can also give money donations when you're able. You can join coalitions and groups who are fighting for fair housing and better services for the mentally ill. You can talk about the issue with community members, making them what they need, making them aware. And I'd say that you can be a voice for many who are mentally ill and have no voice. And if you're unable to do any of that, then you can pray and chant for positive solutions to be made. Give your energy and time somewhere. Do what you can when you can. Collaborate in solidarity with other groups who have a similar quest. No advocacy is too little to have an effect, and no advocacy is too much.
Yes, thank you so much for that response. I feel like that connects very well with what like this summit was all about, like that no activism is too, or no action is too small, like to have an impact. Like just the fact that we're all here together and like trying to you know, expand on this movement is just so important. And we're like, again, so grateful for you for being here with us and sharing your expertise on that.
And I think even just doing, I keep coming back to sort of, you know, reflection, self-reflection, self-awareness. I think even that is worth a lot because thought leads to action. And, if you're reflecting on something, thinking about it, concerned about it, you're more likely to go in the direction of taking action.
100%.
So we want to ask our last question. It's more of a funner question. So throughout your careers, what have been your favorite aspects? And the most challenging aspects of your personal work in mental health services?
You're asking me?
I
Or
think,
both.
yeah, if
Yes,
you
go
want to
first.
answer.
Thank you, Dana.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to another point before I answer that, if I might,
Definitely.
because I had thought a lot about the question that was going to be asked about low income and communities of color. Is it all right if I go back to that?
Yes. 100%.
I wanted to say that low-income communities and communities of color are already at the bottom of the list as recipients of adequate mental health services for the following reasons. It's due to poverty. People in these communities can't easily pay for therapeutic services, and as I said earlier, many people don't have computers. Due to former experiences and intergenerational trauma, people in these communities often have to submit to counseling and therapy with someone they consciously or unconsciously believe to be related to the problem, someone who is privileged and is not like them. Not long ago, there were mental health institutions in the United States that only housed African Americans. Many African Americans were locked in them because they were seen as threats to existing power structures or groups and were not mentally ill. This caused resentment and failing trust. Due to suspicions and fears, often not having accurate information or listening to gossip, low-income communities and communities of color may shy away from necessary mental health care. Due to existing disparities because of racism and political economics, the good mental health of communities of color and those in low-income communities is often not seen as a priority by existing authorities and systems. They aren't even expected to be mentally healthy. When I was very young, I wondered why more people of low income communities and those who lived in communities basically of one particular ethnic group or color, why they weren't mentally ill. More of them, with all the hate, redlining, tricks and traps and methods of discouragement around them. Money for mental health care in those communities is often less or non-existent as compared to other communities. And did you know that not long ago, people of color and those who were poor were misdiagnosed due to lack of caring, reluctance to get clear information upon assessment? For example, more than a few African Americans and males and men who were Latinos who seemed threatening maybe, were misdiagnosed as being schizophrenic.
Yeah, very true.
There was a lack of knowledge about these groups. Or they were diagnosed incorrectly on purpose, if you could believe that, so that outcomes for an individual will be what was wanted by others in power. And I'll give you an example I saw with my own eyes. Years ago, I saw a New York judge overturn the diagnosis made by one psychiatrist by getting another psychiatrist to give a diagnosis that would keep that individual, that was a black teenager, behind bars for many more years. That's just one example of racism and political manipulations. 2 years ago, the Psychiatric Association made a written and public apology for many of the unjust occurrences in their profession that they perpetrated. There's one of the reasons that people cry out, Black Lives Matter. They feel already looked down upon because of their low economic status and often because of their color and ethnicity. Now add to that stigma of being mentally ill or imbalanced. Well, many would prefer not to seek professional help and would rather suffer in silence than face the stigma of having a mental illness. Individuals and members of their families often do keep secrets of mental illness within the family, if they can. Or people who have mental illnesses self-medicate with alcohol or drugs. And a growing number are committing suicide in order not to have one more thing to be looked down upon maybe, because of what's perceived as their flawed condition, or to shame their families because of their mental illness or mental disability. Too often these people don't know the hereditary factors involved with many mental illnesses and that it's not their fault that they are the way that they are. Too often these people aren't aware that people of every color, ethnicity, nationality have mental illness within their groups. So I just wanted to say that it's important to know that the stigma of mental illness is overwhelming to many people. The stigma of having a mental illness keeps people in fear. Dana talked about fear earlier. The fear of being discovered as being flawed. The fear of being taken advantage of. The fear of not getting a job, adequate housing, or other amenities that might keep them kept or be kept from them. The fear of not being able to be helped. The fear of not finding love and acceptance. And one of the biggest threats to persons with mental illnesses is that of being shunned, isolated, abandoned, and alone. I felt it was important for me to mention these things, and I hope it's okay. We can go on.
Thank you so much. That was very thorough, but very much needed. Just going back to the last question before we get to your poem, we just would like if you both could share your favorite aspects of your work in mental health care, and also the most challenging aspect of your work.
Yeah, I can start. And that's really a hard question because, I could talk about it as far as the actual of what I do or am able to do, or I could talk about it from a standpoint of like the process, like my journey. But I think what I really like is I became a psychologist to make social change, really in my community, Black communities. And with psychology, there's so many different ways to do that. I know a lot of people think the first thing that people think of when they think of psychologists is therapy, and that's one thing. Therapy is we've talked about it being a very powerful tool, but psychologists do just a lot of different things. I've been able to do a lot of community-based work. That's probably my favorite kind of thing to do. You can do community education. I love that also. You can educate students. Done some of that too. That's wonderful. So I think it's the variety and the opportunities for making change are really what I love the most about being a psychologist. And did you want me to talk about the challenging thing? Oh, yeah. So maybe it's related to what my favorite thing is, that sometimes it is, and maybe some of y'all can relate to this, sometimes it's hard to know where to start. There's so many things that you care about and so many things that need to be addressed that, where do I even start? And it can feel, all the options feel overwhelming. But it's just important to start somewhere. Just start, and you will find your path, and the process of finding your path is really, really wonderful.
Thank you. Dr. Heinzami, would you like to share?
Yes, thank you. I think my favorite aspects have been meeting and helping a client at a crossroads in his or her life. That to me is so significant, and helping someone towards self-realization. I mentioned community work, and I've done some. I'll mention one of the things I've done. I created something called the Healing Woman Circle, and it was myself and 3 other friends who got together and went on a retreat together to talk. And when one is talking, no one else is talking. To listen, to give feedback, and to give friendship. And there are a few people out there who can do that on their own if they can't afford to go to a therapist, or if a therapist is available to be a part of that or such a group. I know that with the Association of Black Psychologists, we have something called the Soa Bona Healing Circles. And those circles were created when people around the country were faced with trauma and faced with tribulations that perhaps, especially during the time of COVID, when people, not like the time is over, when people were unable to get in groups and talk about how they felt when someone was murdered on TV or someone else was killed, or just different things that occurred. And healing circles like this, where you find a safe space to be at with people you can talk with and trust, that's very helpful, and it's a favorite aspect of mine. Another one is my private practice. I love having a private practice, and I think that people who go into the field, if they can do that, they'll find that it's more liberating than just being in an agency. But yeah, you need both. And a favorite aspect, I hope I'm not taking too much time up, is coping with the unexpected. It can be exciting to be in this field. I was counseling a client who was homeless, but in his vehicle about 2 months ago. And it was time for us to do some guided imagery with his eyes closed. And he began to do that, and we were successful at that until lights started flashing on his car that I saw. He didn't see, his eyes were closed. And then the police started banging on the windows of his car, and he was jarred and said, I'm not having any drugs here. I don't have drugs. You can check, whatever. And I had to talk to the police from a phone saying, wow, I'm his therapist. We're working on something together. You know, that could have been an awful situation if they didn't believe me or him and just dragged him out of the car, you know. And that was exciting, and I'm glad it successfully turned out to be something that we could later take a breath and breathe and say, okay, everything's all right. Using spirituality and working in the healing process is another aspect I really truly enjoy. Incorporating a client's belief system into their healing process, their traditions, their culture, making something up, even if they didn't have the knowledge of it from their culture, is something that I really like doing. I'll get into the challenging after Dana talks about her challenges.
Oh, I talked about my challenges. They were, yeah.
I know you said it was similar to your
Yeah.
same aspects. Well, my challenges sometimes are working with people who don't think that they have a mental illness and who have lots of power over others in their hands. This can happen when dealing with administrators or administrations and even presidents. So another aspect that's a challenge is working with the developmentally disabled and those who have birth defects or injuries and conditions that can't be changed significantly over time. Everyone needs help, and they need help too, and I have worked with them. Sometimes there's a little progress to be seen, and it's just not my favorite aspect to be working on in the field of mental health. But I'm so glad that there are so many other caring people who do that. And the last challenge I'll mention is helping families and loved ones to understand about life from those who are getting ready to leave it, like people with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Helping their loved ones to remember how they were before the illness and their true essences, which they are now unable to project through deteriorating bodies. Although they are not behaving the way they used to, helping someone remember why and to remember to love them unconditionally is something that I feel close to my heart. They need understanding and love. We all do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to both for answering our questions and just keeping the audience engaged.
Yes, that was truly beautiful, especially how you ended that. Like, we all deserve love, we all deserve, like, care. I feel like that also has been emphasized over the summit, like that we all deserve just that place, that rest, and like you were saying earlier, also like that validation that everything's, that we're human.
And everyone really, it's a human need, love. Maybe we have different ways about getting it, going about getting it. Maybe we have different ideas about what it looks like, but that's something that we all have in common and can join around, that we want love.
Yeah, I feel like that's a beautiful place to end. Again, thank you so much to our panelists for their And then as the final section of our panel here, we're going to have Dr. Heinzami read us her poem about peace and lead us in reflection. And Dr. Heinzami, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm aware of the time, so I'll try to fit it in. The name of my poem is called A Piece of Peace. A piece of peace is better than no peace at all. It's like a drop of water, not wetter than a large waterfall, but just the taste to get your appetite flowing, and you won't waste, I bet, a morsel of it knowing. Peace stops wars across the shores. It heals pain and keeps us sane. It calms minds at desperate times. It holds hands throughout the lands. It warms hearts and other parts. Takes out cold from young and old. It makes friends so hatred ends. It breathes life, removing strife. It grows love, lifts us above. It brings smiles across the miles. Makes birds sing their songs of spring. Makes us laugh and not seek wrath. We won't cringe and seek revenge. It's the key, serenity. It renews if we just choose to go in peace. If not, we lose. But what if we choose a bigger piece of peace? What if we had inner peace and outer peace and peace in between? Each of us would act peacefully, you know what I mean? What if peace was our coming and our going? What if peace was our savior and all-knowing? What if peace was our calling? What if peace was our all-in? Then you and I, and 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 we would be content. That would be heaven sent. We'd be able to breathe free, helping, healing, you and me. We would truly be alive. We would all then learn to thrive. And resilient we can be, with a bigger piece, you see, of peace for you and me. This reflection really shouldn't be quick, but we're going to make it quick. And it's my saying to you that it's not an accident that those of you who are here or are in any way witness to this wonderful Peace and Justice Summit at CUNY are here. It's not an accident. The universe placed you in the right place at the right time. Those of you who have been here through this Peace and Justice Summit, those of you who have been here for just a day or half a day, and those who've been here even just for this moment are not here by chance. You were made for and have been waiting for this moment in time. And this place, wherever you are, has been waiting for you. It's your season to rise up and become who you truly are, who you were always meant to be. You took on this mission even before you were born, perhaps. It is the mission of helping to heal the world more rapidly than has been done so far. It is the mission of helping all life created to move upward in a spiral formation, evolution. This healing and evolving mission is especially directed at the human population who seem to be stuck for the large part when it comes to peace, justice, conservation, and sustainability. We want humans to see themselves, their true selves, in each other, no matter what they look like on the outside, no matter what their physical features, no matter what their languages, no matter what their baggage and history. We want humans to develop the empathy that will allow them to feel what is going on with others in their emotions and their responses to trauma and intergenerational trauma. You are building the next generation for the students and concerned citizens movement for peace and justice. I'd like you to, as Dana had you do earlier at the beginning, close your eyes, if you will, with me, if you feel comfortable enough. Close your eyes, and whether you're sitting or standing, have your arms and legs uncrossed. Think and answer the following. Should everyone in the world be the same? Should we appreciate and embrace diversity? What diversity exists in your life now? Can you see the beauty and strength of energies of every kind coming together to help and heal problems in our world? Can you increase diversity in your life? Can you increase kindness in your life? Can you increase forgiveness in your life? Can you increase gratitude in your life? Can you increase love in your life? I used to pray only for mine, my family, myself, my friends. That's when I was younger. Now I pray for everyone. Humans, animals, plants, minerals. We all live in this world together and affect each other. We have 2 more minutes, if you will, with your eyes still closed. Take slow, rhythmic breaths. I wanted to do a breathing exercise with you, but breathe on your own and know that everyone around you is taking slow and deep breaths together and relaxing more and more. See and inhale sparkling, healing life and light when you inhale. And hold it, and then blow out through your mouth. It's slower and slower. See the healing light and life force entering you and staying in you even when you exhale. You're illuminated inside your vehicle, your body. You're a conduit now for the universe's healing light and life. What would happen if we all at the same time imagined the world, our entire world with people of all different cultures, backgrounds, colors, genders, sexual orientations, ages, ability levels, religious beliefs, smiling with arms open wide, hugging each other, loving each other, seeing the one in each other beyond the differences, laughing together, helping each other, wiping the tears of others away, healing, sharing, teaching, feeding each other, crafting together, showing love to animals, planting seeds for a garden of vegetables in abundance, planting flowers and plants of all different types everywhere. What would happen if we all saw these things together in our mind's eye? If we saw behaviors we have that are like those of people everywhere in pursuit of living their lives naturally. We all want to be happy, healthy, and to live our lives naturally and in peace. See the healing light in you going into others you see in your mind's eye right now. Know that everyone around you is doing the same. You're all here for that purpose. See humans in your mind's eye becoming more peaceful, more honest, more just, and more loving. You are also generating in them increased awareness and understanding. See loving and sparkling light around all your mind pictures. Know that you are making an impression on the world that will last. All of us doing it together right now, this time, makes a powerful impression upon the world that will last. Thank you for engaging in this exercise.
So what are we out of that?
You may open your eyes.
Thank you so much. That was very peaceful. The poem and also just reflecting and just like
You're more than welcome.
grounding ourselves in the moment. I think we're often really stressed out about everything around us that we never really take a moment to just be in the moment.
Yeah, we miss a lot of life by, being in a frenzy. I do anyway. I think a lot of people.
I think a lot of people do. So I think that's the end of our panel, or the end of our summit. Well, not the end of our summit. We'll have closer remarks. But we're so grateful to Dr. Collins and Dr.
Thank you all.
Hansami again for their time, for coming, and contributing to this final session of the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice. And thank you again, everybody, for your participation. And I will hand it off to Renee for his final comments.
So let's have a round of applause.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
So much.
So here we are. That is right, here we are. We began the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice with an amazing panel on building the student movement for peace and justice. And we concluded with a panel on mental health care and the value of finding joy and restorative justice in our communities. And so I feel this kind of symbiotic and interconnected nature between the actual organizing and the love that we're trying to find in people together. After 3 days, about 5 hours each day, we are now set to conclude the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice. Firstly, I want to thank Dr. Hansami and Dr. Collins for the amazing panel on mental health in communities of color. That was fantastic and truly insightful. I look back on what we've done today and I'm truly impressed. We also hosted Autumn Abba for a discussion on the undocumented experience. We had a multitude of guided discussions with the Macaulay Immigrant Support Network, Humans of Macaulay, and Macaulay Peace Action's own Gav Mieri, and we concluded the amazing Artivism Gallery. Today is truly representative of the potential that we have to build a student movement for peace and justice. All 3 days of this summit and everything that each and every attendee has contributed demonstrates that potential. Throughout the CUNY Summit, I had one particular quote on my mind, and that quote is, "Things you call dead haven't yet had the chance to be born." In many ways, those words have formed the ethos of my approach to politics and social justice. By the way, they weren't spoken by some great resistance fighter or political theorist or philosopher. They were famously sung by American musician Scatman John in 1994. But anyway, the reason why I'm so enthralled by that statement, things you call dead haven't yet had the chance to be born, is because it is a reminder that all this work we've been doing over the summit is going towards a real end. So many times I've heard that achieving a better world for all is pie in the sky, a fantasy, delusional, a pipe dream. They think that achieving a world in which we are free from the chains of oppression is impossible. They think that what we have now is what we will always have, and I thoroughly reject that. How can you call a world free from oppression dead when you haven't yet seen it be born yet? This summit proves the naysayers wrong. We prove that we can organize people of all different backgrounds and communities around political education and action. We proved that people don't want to just chip at the corners of our world's most immediate problems, but that they truly want to reimagine our world. We proved that people are ready to build a society in which all people are free and equal, treat each other with compassion and care, and can truly find peace and rest in their lives. This summit was exhausting. It took months upon months upon months of planning to secure the venue, the catering, the amazing roster of speakers, and organize the activities. And we certainly had difficulties, and I won't be in denial about them. At times, including nowish, let's be honest, turnout was low. We went overtime on the final panel last night. The projector in the third floor classroom refused to work, so we had to bring our own. And day 2 speaker Halil Abu Yahia was late because he literally did not have electricity as a result of the Israeli siege on Gaza. And also we had a fan of Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins kind of be disruptive, and I do apologize for that. But seeing the summit unfold was also exhilarating. Political activism is stressful and it is work, but there's something so empowering about actually being able to work towards a better end, towards something people can actually care about. People were so incredibly understanding about all the difficulties we had to overcome, and we came together, no matter how many or few of us there were, to engage in the kinds of discussions that we need to build a movement. We knew that we tried, and that's what matters. People can talk about a better future as being unrealistic, but is a group of college students putting together a summit of the size and scale not also unrealistic? And so, remember that things you might call dead haven't yet had the chance to be born. When you doubt humanity's common ability to thrive and live in peace and freedom, you only doubt your own abilities as well. Do not doubt your ability to help make a better world for all. Do not doubt your basic right to live in freedom and peace. We work towards ecological justice and sustainability. We work towards protecting our immigrants and refugees. We work towards a free Palestine and a free Ukraine. We work towards healthcare for the people, by the people. We work towards a world free from racism and patriarchy. Because even if a world based around these visions has yet to be realized, it does not mean we should not fight for it. I hope that the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice truly does catalyze the beginnings of a student movement for peace and justice. I hope that people here bonded and made connections needed to facilitate base building. I hope people were inspired and learned from our discussions and activities, because we want to create a new world, a world for the common people. With that, I want to thank everyone here for attending. I want to thank everyone who facilitated an activity or guided discussion. I want to thank the amazing speakers we've hosted. Thank you to the people who supported us in Peace Action New York State, the Greater Branch, as well as Macaulay Student Development. And I want to thank the people that inspired me and kept me going and helped make sure that this summit happened. Thank you to the executive board members of Macaulay Peace Action, the people behind the scenes and moderating these discussions and activities, Sierra Santiago, Nabiha Sabzwari, Aisha Khan, El Shwetz, Leila Gad, Iman Sadiki, Selma Doana, Atta. And thank you to my friends, my most beloved, Tanae Fullerton, Renan Barsha, Logan Arroyo, Victoria Reshetnikov, David Besperzvani, Kasper Bielicki, and Elizabeth Beck. This summit would not have been possible without their incredible support. And so as we conclude the CUNY Summit for Peace and Justice, remember our goal of building a movement to achieve a better world. We say goodbye today, but I hope to see you all in the coming weeks as we try to ensure that this summit has a lasting positive impact. Macaulay Peace Action will be reaching out to plan the next steps of our would-be movement, form working groups and more. But right now, I know we're all exhausted, so thanks again to everyone who came through to the 3 days of the summit, however much of those 3 days, and have a great night. Thank you. All right, you guys can go. Thank you.